Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Awaken Rider podcast. This is episode 2, and today I'm going to take you on a reflective journey through 3 ideologies that at one point in my life I was deeply involved in. These experiences have shaped my understanding of truth and deception within these communities, and I hope my insights resonate with you. Initially, I intended to focus solely on my awakening from Jewish Zionism. However, given the indescribable events unfolding in our world, particularly the ongoing genocide in Palestine, I felt compelled to address the broader implications of these communities and their roles in perpetuating silence, apathy, and oppression. I truly believe these ideologies are keeping us shackled to the old world, perpetuating the suffering of so many people. Let's start with the New Age communities. Coming to terms with the realities of this movement has been an ongoing and often painful process. It has really disheartened me to see individuals who proudly identify as light workers or star seeds and healers remain silent while humanity faces unimaginable suffering. We have been witnessing men, women, and children losing their lives to violence that plays out daily on our screens. Even now, I still feel the weight of the gaslighting I experienced when I was told to just focus on myself instead of addressing the plight of Palestine. But over time, I've come to recognize that the New Age movement has been corrupted, often appropriating traditional and indigenous cultures for commercial gain. The focus has shifted from community care to acquiring more clients, more money, while the plight of those in need is pushed to the background. My experience in these New Age practices began in Brisbane, participating in yoga and meditation circles, and then deepened after I moved to the Sunshine Coast. But it was during a time of personal loss, the death of my father, that I began to awaken to the dissonance within these circles. I found moments meant for shared vulnerability and connection really overshadowed by superficiality. And after a particularly disheartening experience at a yoga session where my grief was met with dismissive attitudes, I decided to step away. I began a journey of self-discovery, reconnecting with my own emotions and my needs. Then came October 7th. A pivotal moment that opened my eyes to the complexity of Jewish Zionism and propelled me to speak out for Palestine. Yet, my attempts to discuss this within the remnants of the New Age community were often met with dismissive responses and silence. Phrases like, "It's not your reality," or "You can't save the world," echoed in my ears, solidifying my distance from these communities. So the New Age ideology predicates that we are transitioning from a 3D reality into a 5D one, characterized by bliss and joy. Some believe in a form of spiritual ascension that absolves them from confronting harsh realities or responsibilities. To me, this perspective is really troubling, particularly when it comes to the suffering faced by countless individuals, especially those in Palestine, Syria, Sudan, Lebanon, and so many more. As I delved deeper, I began to see the underlying currents of colonialism and supremacy within the New Age movement. Many practitioners, while claiming to promote peace and love, inadvertently contribute to a system perpetuating ongoing suffering. Notable figures within this community have often turned a blind eye to the injustices at hand, focusing instead on their personal narratives of growth and prosperity. While I do believe we are here to enjoy our life, our joy should never come at the expense of others, and I know that many people resonate with this sentiment, which echoes the need for a shift in focus away from self and superiority and towards collective humanity. It's been a really difficult awakening. I once fell for the New Earth narrative, adopting a superiority complex, looking down on those that I deemed as less spiritual. I shudder at the thought of my past self. For those of us who have walked alongside the Palestinians over the last 17 months through their suffering, we have lost much, but we've evolved beyond what anything these New Age communities could ever teach us. I believe the most spiritual act we can undertake right now is to care about others, especially those without a voice and who desperately need our support. So this brings me to the second community I want to discuss, the Trump consciousness, or the Trump cult. I must confess my involvement with this ideology between 2020 and 2022 is a chapter I look back on with a mix of disbelief and regret. I was drawn in by promises of salvation, convinced that Trump was a figure who would expose the elites and end the trafficking of children. I awaited his every move, embroiled in theories that fueled my anxieties and my fears. However, as my intuition began to awaken, I gradually came to understand that Trump was not the saviour I had imagined, but rather a puppet leading his followers down a path of disillusionment. This belief among his supporters was that he was engaged in a grand game of 4D chess, fighting against an antichrist figure, revealed a troubling disconnect from the harsh realities of suffering that persisted and still persists under his administration. So the ideology surrounding Trump is closely tied to a dedicated Christian fan base who have stood by him for years, often viewing him as a protector against perceived threats. Yet this perspective frequently overlooks the harm inflicted on others, especially those in Palestine. Whatever Trump says or does, his followers often interpret it in a way that aligns with their belief. He can do 3 good things, but then follow it up with one extremely harmful act. Yet his supporters' primarily focus is on the positive. I now believe Trump is like the Pied Piper, leading his beloved followers off a cliff of hope that I was once part of. All the while they wait for the next date he will supposedly bring down the elites. Finally, I turn my attention to Jewish Zionism. As a descendant of a Holocaust survivor, my upbringing was steeped in narratives that highlighted the persecution of Jews throughout history. I was taught about the horrors of the Holocaust in vivid detail, which instilled in me a profound sense of fear and a strong cultural identity. Films like Schindler's List and The Diary of Anne Frank shaped up my understanding, reinforcing the message that we, the Jews, are the most persecuted people in the world, and that Israel is our promised sanctuary, a land without people made by God for us. I was even told that we made the desert bloom. Growing up within passionate Jewish communities in both Melbourne and the Gold Coast, I was surrounded by family who espoused unwavering support for Israel's actions. I was raised to believe that we were the chosen people, a narrative that often emphasized family, wealth, and status, but was really devoid of any discussion about the Palestinian people or their suffering. In fact, in Australia, the word Palestine was never mentioned once within these communities. It wasn't until 2023 that I began to confront the reality of Palestine and the implications of Zionism, discovering that my grandfather, a Holocaust survivor, had later become a Zionist soldier in the Jewish Brigade, a group that played a role in the establishment of the State of Israel, was particularly jarring. This brigade was involved in smuggling Jewish refugees into Palestine after World War II, which complicated the narrative of victimhood I had grown up with. This revelation forced me to reckon with the legacy of my ancestors and the moral implication of their choices. I now often ponder whether my grandfather's actions contributed to the very suffering that we, as a Jewish community, had sought to escape. It is a painful paradox that weighs heavily on my conscience and in my heart. The ideology of Zionism itself is rooted in the belief that Jews have a historical right to self-determination in Palestine, a claim that often disregards the rights and histories of the Palestinian people who have equally deep ties to the land. How can we justify inflicting suffering on others in the name of our own historical grievances? This is a question that haunts me daily as I witness the violence and oppression unfolding. I feel like it is crucial to acknowledge that Ashkenazi Jews, including one side of my family, the other side are Sephardic Jews, are not originally from the Middle East. This complicates the narrative of historical entitlement and raises important questions about who truly has claim to the land. During my research, I've encountered documents like The Jewish State, authored by Theodore Herzl, which controversially suggests that the Jewish homeland could have been established in Argentina, Uruguay, or even Australia. This illustrates the political maneuvering behind the creation of Israel. Additionally, I've come across troubling accounts of how Zionist agents orchestrated events to prompt Jewish migration into Israel from Arab countries, often employing tactics that sowed discord and fear. This historical context challenges the simplistic narratives often presented and compels us to consider the complexities of identity and belonging. As I explored these topics, I also find myself delving into Jewish Kabbalah, a mystical tradition that was never part of my upbringing. I've come to learn that Kabbalah is typically reserved for those who have reached a certain level of understanding within Judaism. This to me raises further questions about the ways in which sacred knowledge is selectively shared and the implications of that secrecy. My journey of discovery over the months has been both enlightening and deeply painful. Although I have distanced myself from the Jewish religion, I still grapple with the weight of my heritage and the actions taken in its name. Witnessing the suffering of Palestinians have evoked memories of the atrocities faced by my ancestors and serves as a haunting reminder of the cyclical nature of violence and oppression. As I conclude this episode today, I want to re-emphasize that the most spiritual act we can undertake is to advocate for those who are voiceless and suffering. True compassion transcends self-interest, and it's imperative that we awaken to the realities of injustice that surround us and speak on it.
Israel kills Palestinian men, women and children, and then they look around the world and they don't receive a single sanction to stop. They are emboldened and they keep acting.
In upcoming episodes, I hope to engage with guests who share similar journeys, individuals who have awakened to the complexities of these ideologies and are prepared to discuss their experiences. I also plan to feature voices from Palestine and more Jewish voices to share their stories, as it is essential to provide a platform for those who have often been silenced.
This is our problem. You own the narrative. You own the United Nations. You own Hollywood. You own all these mouthpieces. Where are our voices?
Thank you for joining me. I realize that what I've shared may evoke a spectrum of responses, but I believe that truth possesses an undeniable power to pierce through deception, and I'm committed to seeking truth and understanding, and I appreciate your willingness to watch this video and engage with these challenging topics. Before we wrap up today's episode, I would like to encourage you to maybe reflect on your own journeys. What ideologies have influenced you? What truths have you uncovered? And how can we, as a collective, foster compassion and understanding in a world that often seems so divided? Until next time, take care of yourselves and look out for one another. Remember, our shared humanity is really our greatest strength. I look forward to seeing you soon for our next episode, where we will continue to explore these vital conversations. I also have a special guest. Thank you for being part of the Awaken Writer community. Together, let's awaken to our roles in creating a more just and compassionate world.